Hello and welcome to Chat with Nelly podcast. It's so good to have you here. If you can hear the sound of my voice, welcome, welcome, welcome. I am your host, Atari Nelly, and I'm going to be the one holding your hand on this particular train ride. Yes, I call it a train ride because I'm excited about the journey that we're about to begin. And I know that you're going to enjoy the ride as well. So, welcome. Um, you know, we are going to be talking about a particular uh topic for a little while, but I just want to give us some background, story to it. We get to see like different hacks and tips, that help us enhance our living, tips on sleeping, on exercising, on dieting, hacks on how to do things around the house, hacks on, DIYs, all of that. However, I hardly see things about friendships. Yes, we are going to be helping the train of friendships on this podcast for a little while. The Chat with Nelly podcast is a podcast that takes conversations and sometimes monologues, like I'm doing right now, about relational things, relational topics. And it's going to be centered around friendships, like we're looking at for a while now, family and the likes. So that's what this podcast is going to be about, taking it one conversation at a time. And it is very unique because this podcast is not just for me to speak or guests who come on the show to speak. I would like to hear from you. So, to that effect, there is a mail called the Chat with Nelly podcast at gmail.com, where you can send in questions, you can send in contributions, you can send in experiences pertaining to a topic that you've listened to or a topic that I say, oh, we're going to talk about in the next episode. You can send in your experiences, your questions, your thoughts, your suggestions, and we will look at them on the podcast. So it's going to be, a whole ride. And I'm not going to be the only driver. Yeah, we're going to drive together, right? You know how we say, Jesus, take the wheel, right? Yes, but I'm no Jesus, even though I follow him, but I'm not Jesus. So we're going to be riding together. And I hope that you do enjoy the ride. I am grateful that you have given me your time right now to listen to me. Um, why do we need this podcast? Like I was saying earlier, there are hacks about everything, and yet we do not talk about friendships a whole lot. So people just sort of wing it. And sometimes we can be lucky to have good friends. We can even have other people be lucky to have us as good friends. Other times it can be the other way around. So it is of utmost importance that we look at this together and ask ourselves questions like, how can I be a good friend? Or am I a good friend? Or do I have good friends around me? Why? Because man is like a social being and we cannot do without interacting and forming bonds and, just having people in our circle. We do not do well when we are lonely or isolated. So that is why making friends is sort of like essential. Like it's almost like a survival skill. Nobody can survive on their own for too long. So that's why we're going to be looking at that on this particular, podcast. And I'm so glad to have you here. Thank you for boarding. So you are on a one-way trip to Friendship Town. And I would like to argue sometimes that I feel like society is getting more lonely by the day because of social media and technology and all of that. So people are relegating relating with others and making authentic and strong friendships and bonds. They're relegating it to the side and taking up, likes on Instagram and, followership on Twitter and Snapchat, streaks and all of that has become like the new way. And so you have people like your photo on Instagram and then you think, oh yeah, they're my friends. But it is deeper than that. So that's what we're going to try and be dissecting here on the podcast for a while. And I hope that we can both, you and I, learn a thing or two that will help us become better friends. This podcast is for anyone who really wants to make authentic friendships. Anyone who wants to be able to be better at relating to the next person. That's who this podcast is for. So parents, um, workers, young people, old people, we relate in all like levels. So if you're hearing the sound of my voice and you are not by yourself in this entire world, you should listen to this podcast. And you're going to gain insights, you're going to gain tips, you're also going to gain, a way of going back and forth with someone who is willing to listen to your questions, your suggestions, your thoughts, and go over it. The importance of life is that we are open to learning, unlearning, and relearning so that as we go day by day, as we get older, we become better versions of ourselves. As we turn the chapter with a new age, we become better people and we adapt better and relate better. So, yes, the Chat with Nelly podcast is here to stay, and I would be very glad if you do stay for the entire trip and get to the destination that we are headed to. Again, we are going to be very relational in this podcast. So there is a mail that you can reach me on with your suggestions, questions, thoughts. And that mail is chatwithnellypodcast@gmail.com. If you decide that you want to remain anonymous when you send your mail, please just indicate, and that would be solely respected. We don't have to say your name, but then if you do not mind, we also would like to know as well. Thank you very much. I hope that this will not be the last time you hear the sound of my voice, that you're going to come back and, kickstart the journey. We're just trying to do some intro here. So you're buying your ticket and you're going to sit tight and enjoy the trip. Thank you very much. Till next time, I remain your host, Atari Nelly, Chat with Nelly podcast.